It's 8 o'clock. Please rise for the Star-Spangled Banner. Thank you very much, Mrs. Howard. If there are any precincts that have not yet organized, please do so at the break. Precincts 1 through 5 will be organizing in this corridor over here. 6 through 12 will be upstairs, and that corridor, oh, we can't do it over here. 13 through 16 of the front hall left, and 17 through 21 will be in the front hall right, except 18 are going to be right outside the assessor's office. 18 has a vacancy that they're going to fill, so right outside the assessor's office at the break. And please get organized this evening. Thank you. Are there any town meeting members who have not yet been sworn in? If so, please rise. Hey, Mr. Ciano. I, well, shh, quiet please. I will participate fully in, and will fairly evaluate all matters before town meeting and vote in the best interests of the town. I support free speech and will treat others with mutual respect. And will conduct myself in a civil manner that is becoming of an elected town meeting member. I do solemnly swear that I'll faithfully and impartially perform the duties incumbent upon me as a town meeting member. Of the town of Arlington in accordance with the bylaws, the Town Manager Act, and the general laws of the Commonwealth, so help me God. Thank you. Test vote. Everyone have your clicker? As soon as Mr. Athwood is ready. Here's a question. There's a real stumper. Did Jackson Pollock revolutionize art with his photorealistic paintings? 1 for yes, 2 for no. Photorealistic paintings. Well, the noes have it, 145 to 19. It was not photorealistic paintings, it was some sort of abstract splatter painting. Okay. Mr. Coro.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Joe Curo, Board of Selectmen. It is moved that if all the business of the meeting is set forth in the warrant for the annual town meeting is not disposed of at this session, when the meeting adjourns, it adjourns to Wednesday, May 3rd, 2017 at 8 o'clock p.m.
All in favor, please say yes. Opposed? Okay, so we're at least going to go through next Wednesday. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome the administrators and the students of our sister city from Japan, Nagaoka-kyu. And we have with us their chairwoman of their equivalent to the Board of Education, Umiko Iwasaki. Did I get it right?
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
こんにちは。Oh, thank you. So, we are from your sister city, Nagaoka-kyo, and we will stay here for 10 days. So, on behalf of Nagaoka-kyo City, thank you so much for your warm welcome. Our students really enjoy the exciting stay in Arlington and having this heart-warming event. We are very, very, very happy to be here. Thank you again for hosting us and bringing this program to us. So I hope the friendly relationship between Arlington and Nagaoka-kyo City, so forever. So thank you so much. ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. Do we have any reports of committees? Committee reports. Mr. Tosti.
If you could take your Finance Committee report out, I just have a change in Article 32. Very simple. So it's Article 32 on page 6 and 7. It's the nice salmon-colored book. So page 6 and page 7. It's very simple. You have, on page 6, you have section 2. On page 7, you have section 3. One adds positions, the other deletes them. What I want you to do is delete 2A and 3A. 2A, delete. Same with 3A. And then just change the letters down the line. So simply, our recommendation is to delete 2A and 3A. The town has decided to take those positions up at a future town meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we're all going to make that change administratively without further vote of the meeting. Any other reports of committees?
John Ellis, Precinct 3. Short update from the Tree Committee on behalf of Arlington Town Meeting members and Tree Committee members, Susan Stamps and Ed Tremblay. In addition to the aesthetic value of the tree canopy in Arlington, there are a number of positive, demonstrable impacts on the physical and financial health of its residents, including streets with more trees tend to have healthier residents, streets with trees have higher property values, And homeowners who have a street tree in front of their home have lower energy costs because of windbreaks in the winter, reducing their heating costs, and in the summer, lower cooling costs. Trees break up heat islands as well as provide noise reduction. So how did the town do in 2016 at protecting its canopy? Not bad, pretty good. In 2016, the Department of Public Works reported it planted 175 trees while removing 187, meaning there was some reduction in our tree canopy because the trees that were planted were likely smaller than those that were removed. There are 3 initiatives I want to tell you about tonight from the tree committee. The first is that we have successfully implemented, working with the DPW and the tree warden, the town tree bylaw, which was passed by this body last year and focuses on the protection of trees on private property during major renovations. The process is being followed, developers are paying their fees, and trees are being protected thanks to your efforts. Another initiative I want to tell you about is that this year, for the first time, we began to spend some of the money the town received in 2012 that was part of a $150,000 bequest given to the town by former resident John McEachern. On Friday, which was Arbor Day, trees were delivered to homes in East Arlington using money from this bequest. And by leveraging the town's buying power, shared delivery costs, and payments from homeowners to plant 25 dogwood trees on private property close to public rights of way, we spent just $750 out of that $150,000 request. This was a quite successful spend, and we expect this program will continue. The third initiative, which you can see a little bit behind me, is that in 2016, the committee and volunteers tested a smartphone app that allowed us to do a tree inventory using our phones. It's a program called Open Tree Map. And we identify the location, the species, the health, and the size of over 1,000 trees in town. The preliminary map is available online and includes data, which you can see behind me, that shows the aggregate impact of the tree canopy, including stormwater remediation, CO2 suppressed, the value of the tree canopy. And this tool, when complete, will help better quantify the financial return of the trees of Arlington and improve our ability to manage it. In the fall, we also applied for a grant from DCR and $15,000 in matching funds to hire 2 interns to continue the work of this inventory that was started by the volunteers. We hope to hear any day. I would say we are fairly optimistic, knock on wood, because the same DCR, no, that was not a pun. But the same department at DCR that is evaluating our grant proposal also inquired with the town, might it be possible that the town of Arlington, would we be willing to host the Tree City USA annual meeting at Town Hall? I was asked to give comments at that meeting, which will take place in June, and the remarks I prepared are slightly different based on whether or not DCR decides to give us that grant. But by far the most important update has little to do with the work of the tree committee and everything to do with a hire made by the DPW department and Mike Rademacher, and that is that in 2016 we hired an extremely qualified tree warden. And here are a few examples of why that might be important to Arlington taxpayers. As you know, the East Arlington Mass Ave project was managed primarily by the state. They hired the contractors, including the landscaping contractor. They planted over 100 trees. What you may not know is that in the opinion of our new tree warden, who came on after the trees had been planted, all 100 were planted improperly. They were planted at a depth that made it likely that tree roots would strangle the tap root and make their long-term viability questionable. The tree warden, because it was a little late in the process, was able to work with the town manager and the head of DPW to get some remediation of this. A number of trees that were obviously dead were replanted, and we got an extension of the warranty. So that was the not great situation. Now that we have a tree warden, I'm going to give you 2 examples of things working a little bit better. Last fall, 5 trees were planted by the Uncle Sam statue. Those were also planted too deep. State not always hiring great contractors, as you might be following. However, this time there was a tree warden on hand, and the trees were immediately reset at the correct depth. And the third example I'll give you of the great return on investment of having a town tree warden is that several months ago, a utility company was working on Lake Street. They thought saw no harm in removing a tree. Now, as you may know, street trees are protected by state law, and they didn't ask for permission, and there was no tree hearing. And because they didn't follow the state law, the tree warden was all over it. He contacted the utility, let them know they were in violation, and that tree company has recently planted 8 or 10 new trees on Lake Street. And this is because we have a tree warden. And so I want to thank the town for filling that position because it's already making a big impact.
Who is this nice guy? What's his name?
Tim Laqueef. Tim Laqueef. And he's a great guy. And I'll close by saying we'd love to have volunteers help us with the tree inventory, and the tree committee is also looking for new members. So thank you.
Any other committee reports? Seeing none? Oh. Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rich Greco, and I am the retirement administrator for the town of Arlington. And the board, which I represent, thought it would be a nice idea to have everybody know who we are and what we do. Okay, thank you. The Arlington Retirement Board is one of 104 boards throughout Massachusetts, which is governed by Mass General Law, Chapter 32. The boards work independently. They are autonomous. The board is made up of 5 members, 2 appointed by the selectmen. The first is the ex officio, which is the position of town comptroller, and then the other, which is currently Rich Viscay. And the other appointed member by the selectmen is Richard Keshen, Esquire, a local attorney. There are 2 elected members by the employees and retirees. So you have to be an employee or retiree to be eligible. It's a 3-year term. And currently, the 2 elected employee representatives are retired treasurer and current board chairman John Bellifer and retired police lieutenant Kenneth Hughes. The 5th member is chosen by the other 4 board members and has to be someone outside the system. And that currently is Kenneth Steele, an investment advisor, bringing his expertise of investments to the board. The retirement board has approximately 700 members and 610 retirees and survivors. All permanent members working for the town, school, or housing authority that work more than 18.75 hours and make over $5,000 are required to be members of the retirement system. The only ones that are not are professional or certified teachers and administrators. They belong to the Mass Teachers Retirement. The Retirement Board in 2016 had an unfunded liability of over $141 million. We had assets of $133 million as of January 1st, 2016. Retirement boards across the Commonwealth work on a calendar year. I know that's different for everybody who usually works on a fiscal year. Currently, there's another actuarial study being done. I don't have the data right now to tell you what the new unfunded liability is, but I can tell you, as of December 31st, 2016, the assets had grown to over $139 million. All retirement boards are mandated to be fully funded by fiscal year 2040. Currently, the January 1st, 2016 funding schedule presumes that the fiscal year 2018 appropriation of $11,696,077 and anticipated growing at 5.5% and a return of 7.25% net of fees, the board will be fully funded in 2036, 4 years ahead of the mandate. The 5.5% increase for this year and future years is based on an agreement of the Retirement Board, Town Manager, and Finance Committee. Try to have a set amount so that the Town and Finance Committee could set their budgets for future years. There is, the parties did agree at that meeting also that if there is a future override to up the growth to 6% in hopes of getting this funded and done and off the books. The total funding schedule of over $11 million, you'll see a lesser number because it's 3.6% of that number is paid by the Arlington Housing Authority, who is also members of our system. They have about 20 employees and 12 retirees. That's why they pay a lesser amount. The retirement board has an annual payroll of $18 million. We have an operating budget of $1.2 million, which approximately $750,000 goes to the state for investment fees. The board receives about $3.5 million from the employees on an annual basis. To summarize it, we have $19.2 million in requirements, payroll, and budget. We get about $15.2 million in receipts from the appropriation and the employee contributions. That means we start the year with a $4 million cash flow deficit. So roughly our system is at about $140 million now. The first 3% of our return goes to breaking even, and everything after that starts chipping away at the unfunded liability. So you know where we get the $3.5 million from? Any employee who started after July 1st of 96 pays 9% on the first $30,000 and 11% on anything thereafter. Employees who were hired from January 1st of 84 to June 30th of 96 pay 8% on their $30,000 and 10% on anything after that. Employees prior to that pay 7 and 2. Most of the workforce, though, is the 8 and the 9. Okay, oops, sorry. So what does the 9% come out of? It's regular compensation. It is salary, longevity, and certain stipends, and possibly if someone gets like licenses and gives extra money for getting a license, a heavy equipment operator, so forth. The misconception is regular compensation, the things that do not go into the retirement calculation, and will show that W-2s don't match what I calculate retirements on, is basically overtime, housing, car allowances, mileage, tool or clothing allowance, and sick and vacation buyouts. So when people say, oh, these guys are working overtime to up their pension, that's not really the case. We don't get deductions out of it. It doesn't go into their retirement calculation. You may or may not know that municipal employees in Massachusetts do not pay into Social Security. So therefore, if you choose a career in a municipality and don't have your 40 credits in, you will not get a Social Security benefit. And as far as the spousal benefit goes, most people with the calculation are offset, so they do not get a Social Security benefit. As I mentioned before, the retirement board is autonomous. It manages its own payroll in-house. Myself and my assistant run the payroll monthly. The retirement budget covers staff salaries, stipends paid to board members, town portion of the health insurance. In other words, the 20/80, we reimburse the town for the 80% of myself and my assistant. Software costs, office rent, lease of equipment, postage, actuarial studies, and investment fees, and any other expenses. We have an oversight agency called the Public Employee Retirement Administration Commission. All our annual reports, any of our changes to any regulations and so forth have to be approved by them, and they audit us on a triannual basis. On our website, on the town website under the retirement board, is a link to their website. It's www.mass.gov/PERAC, and a lot of the regulations and rules that we have to follow are right there. We also have a link to the Mass Prim Board. Mass Prim Board is some kind called the State Investment Agency. They're basically the agency with the state that 93% of our assets are invested in. And there's a link there for mapensions.com. And as always, if you have any questions, my office is on 27 Maple Street in the Senior Center. Some people call it the Central School. It's got about 5 different names, the building. But we're on the ground floor, Suite G11. And I'm also, my email's on the website if anyone would like to get in touch with me and talk about retirement. I've been here 16 years, and this is one of the few times I've come before a town meeting. Hopefully that'll keep happening. I appreciate your time and your patience, and hopefully you're all retirement experts now and won't have any questions anymore from me, right? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Greco. I got to get announcements first. Are there any announcements or resolutions? Announcements. You guys will be all next. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Michael Rudman, Precinct 9, and a member of Minuteman High School's General Advisory Board. Our bake sale tonight is provided by students from Minuteman High School. All of the cookies, the pastries, the loaves of bread, the coffee cake were all made in the bake shop, which is open to the public in the middle of the day, as well as is the Fife and Drum restaurant, which is cooking is done by the culinary shop kids, service by the hospitality. Kids who are volunteering tonight come from those shops and about 8 different others, so we are grateful to have them here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Revelak?
Good evening, Steve Revelak, 111 Sunnyside Avenue, Precinct 1. Yesterday morning, members of my neighborhood organized a cleanup effort in the Alewife Brook Greenway, where we collected 42 bags of trash from Broadway, along the Greenway from Broadway all the way down to Mystic Valley Parkway. We took it to a designated corner, and DPW came by and cleaned it up, or picked it up. Thank you, DPW. Now, unbeknownst to us, when we were getting this together, the town had also organized a number of cleanup efforts around town. I guess it was Make Arlington Beautiful Day. But I just want to say I really appreciate the town's willingness to take on those kind of efforts and to assist, residents who are doing work on their own, because it gets the trash off the ground and it just makes things look better. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Howard?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jane Howard from Precinct 10. I have a somewhat similar story. The 13th annual Spy Pond Trails Day will be a week from Saturday, May 13th, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. This is organized by Vision 2020's Spy Pond Committee and the Appalachian Mountain Club. And they are all volunteers, and a host of Arlington other folks, like the ones that you just talked about, are this time going to try to make the edge of Spy Pond towards Route 2, along the bank there, more pleasant as well. We'll be meeting along the Route 2 path from 9 to 1 p.m. You can park usually on the Lake Street sort of side, and we also have porta potties available for those who help. You'll help to control invasives, clear vistas, pick up trash, improve the trails to the pond from the path. So in the last 13 years, this is the 13th time we've done this, we've put in 10 trails from Pleasant Street to Lake Street down to the pond so that erosion is somewhat controlled. The first of those has 29 steps. They were all done with AMC help, and none of it is chinked. It's all solid granite blocks that came from the curbing at Sims Hospital. There is even a bench that is quite beautiful, made of curved curbing. So if you come, you can bring your children. Children under 12 have to have parents or guardians with them. This is also a place where the kids in the high school who have work hours can have them signed off. So bring gloves, a rake, a shovel, pruning shears, wear sturdy clothing, footwear, perhaps a hat and some sunscreen. We'll do it whether it's fair weather or rain. And we hope you come. It's from 9 to 1. And after you finish, perhaps we also have snacks and goodies. And bring your lunch, and we can enjoy what we did for the previous 4 hours. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Betty Stone from Precinct 7. I would like to invite all my fellow town meeting members, town officials, town employees, to continue Arlington's conversation about immigration at a special event at the Robbins Library on May 24th in the evening. The film short documentary entitled Invisible Crisis, The Female Face of Forced Migration will be screened, and following that there will be a panel discussion about the many women who are part of the migration that comes from Central America through Mexico, and they are fleeing systematic human rights abuses primarily in the countries of El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. So I would love to see lots of you there to continue the discussion. It will be facilitated by Centro Presente, which is an immigrant organization that has been in business since 1981, working on economic and social justice and immigration rights. They're currently based in East Boston, I believe. You can find little half sheets where the tree committee is. I want you to appreciate that we're saving trees. We didn't make full-size flyers; they're half sheets. On the back page, or on the back table, and I think some also found their ways to your seats. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, Mr. Coro.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Joe Curo, Precinct 15, member of the Board of Selectmen. Either on your seats or in the back, you'll find a flyer regarding a June 6th visioning session that's taking place here. The town is receiving assistance from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council on an effort that's being headed up by the Planning Community Development Department, as well as the Arlington Commission on Arts and Culture. I'm a member of the working group on this. There was a visioning session about a month or two ago. Here, there's also been a survey that I think a lot of you probably took part in. This will be the final chapter on that to try to help develop an action plan for arts and culture in Arlington. It'll be June 6, 2017, 6:30 to 9, right here in the Town Hall Auditorium. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coro. Any others? Miss?
Angela Olszewski, Precinct 17 and Chair of ATED. We just want to announce that the visitor center is open and the site work is completed at the Uncle Sam Plaza, and it looks great. And we're seeing lots of people stop by, sit on the benches, and take pictures of the statue. And so we've got a lot of programming planned and a great season planned, and so we need everybody's help. So we want you at the Uncle Sam Plaza. And so if you're interested in volunteering, you love Arlington, and you want to tell the story, we have flyers on the back table. We've got Barbara Goodman, our volunteer coordinator, ready to take your name and contact information at break out in the foyer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Seeing none. Mr. Tosti?
I move that Article 3 be laid upon the table.
All in favor of laying Article 3 upon the table, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? Article 3 is upon the table.
As was previously announced, we were going to bring up Minuteman first thing this town meeting, because the superintendent has to be at like 10 different town meetings. Therefore, to do that, I have to take certain articles out of order. So, Mr. Moderator, I move that Article 19 through 43 be laid upon the table.
All in favor of laying those Articles 19 to 43 that have not been previously taken up upon the table, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? That brings us to Article 44.
I'd like to introduce Steve DeCourcy, representing the Finance Committee, to give our position.
Thank you, Mr. Tosti. Stephen DeCourcy, Precinct 2. Mr. Moderator, I'm going to be making some brief remarks on behalf of the Finance Committee. I'm then going to turn the presentation over to Dr. Boquillan from Minuteman, and he's asked for the combined presentation for a total of 15 minutes.
Including your time?
Including my time.
They're requesting 15 minutes. All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? You have 15 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, town meeting members. The Finance Committee is recommending an appropriation of $4,291,333 for Arlington's share of the operating expenses for Minuteman for fiscal year 2018. This is a budget presentation for Minuteman that you'll hear from Dr. Boquillan. So by voting this appropriation, a requested appropriation, you're actually voting approval of the overall budget for Minuteman. And this evening on the chairs, the same students who are out selling baked goods distributed the Minuteman presentation. And you'll see in that presentation that this year's Minuteman budget is a total of $19,449,466, a decrease of 1.4%. But for various reasons relating to the restructuring of the membership of Minuteman and the manner in which operating costs are apportioned, Arlington share has actually increased dramatically this year to the $4.2 million. And part of that is, a large part of that is because of the change in the regional agreement. We are now using a rolling average of 4 years prior enrollment to determine our share. And if you look in the handout that you received at page 4, 2 of those years, Arlington had 165 and 152 students. We're now down to about 120, but those 2 larger years actually get included in the total. And so for this year, as we're in transition, we see a larger increase than the increase in the budget. Last thing I want to say before turning it over to Dr. Boquillan is if you turn to page 6 of the handout that was on your chairs, Minuteman is different than other appropriations in that all of the expenses are taken into account, and then the various revenue sources are also considered. And you'll see Chapter 78 is the state aid, regional transportation reimbursement comes from the state, prior year and current year tuition is actually what is received from non-member community students. Certified excess and deficiency is revenue surplus from prior years that is factored in. What's left at the end of the day is the member assessments, which gets divided up. So while the budget went down 1.4%, member town assessments went increased 5.5%, which is the increase from 10.9 to 11.5. The Finance Committee voted 14 in favor, 2 against to support this appropriation. With that, I will turn it over to Dr. Edward Boquillan, the superintendent of the Minuteman District.
Thanks, Mr. DeCourcy. Mr. Moderator, I have a presentation that I'd like to go through. Forgive me for turning my back to you, but I don't have it all memorized. Mr. DeCourcy went over our overall budget increase is about a decrease. Member town assessments are up, and the Arlington assessment is $4.3 million. Some highlights from Minuteman for the last year. On September 20th, we had a district-wide election where our new building was approved by over 70% margin in our 16 member towns. The Department of Education restored us to a level 1 school. We also had 100% pass rates on a number of ELA, English Language Arts, Chemistry, and on our MCAS, 99% first pass rate on Biology, 95% on MCAS. I mention that because 47% of our students are receiving special education services of some kind. So this is a real testimony and a piece of data that speaks to our staff and teachers, and I'm very proud of them and our kids. As we're going for our bonding, we went to a bond rating. We received the highest rating that we could from Standard & Poor's for our bonding our project. Our FY16 audit had absolutely no management letter. When I first arrived at Minuteman 10 years ago now, our management letter was about 25 pages long. So we've really taken some strong efforts in revising how we do things financially. We've received over $1.2 million in grants in the last 12 months, mostly from the state of Massachusetts to fund our new building in terms of the equipment. We know what's called the FF&E, you'll hear about it as your projects move forward. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment for a vocational school are wholly inadequate, but we've been fortunate to secure some significant funding for new equipment. Our budget over the last couple of years, this is the second year in a row that our budget has actually decreased overall. This is a transition budget. As was mentioned, that we have a new regional agreement. We're going from 16 member towns to 10 member towns. And as our budget indicates, over the last 2 fiscal years, we've had to right-size the school. We've been able to do that in a sort of a gentle and kind way. When people retire, we don't refill those positions. We really, over the last 3 years, have had no active layoffs, and we've been very fortunate. My teachers union has worked really closely with us in going through this transition. We just signed a new 3-year collective bargaining agreement where the teachers agreed to just a 1% increase for next year, 2% the year after that, and 3% following that. This shows some of the staffing impacts over the last few years. These are reductions every year. We're working very hard during this transition period to lower the impact of the fiscal costs of going to really a brand new regional school district. Some of the considerations for our budget: we have to fund the first year of our school building debt service. We want to continue to maintain the building that we have in a safe and healthful way. We're implementing an academy model, a true academy model, where our academic and vocational curricula are deeply and broadly integrated, and the school is actually designed around this, but we're implementing it already. We're reconfiguring our bus transportation system. Obviously, we've had 16 towns, from Arlington to Lancaster, and all the way down to Dover. We're going to be saving some money in our transportation as we go forward. We have to continue to fund our OPEB liability. This budget funds about $50,000, and we add about $100,000 to our stabilization account. The Arlington enrollment has gone up and down over the last 10, 15 years, which was one of the reasons that we wanted to have a 4-year rolling average for the calculation of assessments, because you can imagine with this sort of a fluctuation, assessments would go up wildly. Enrollment in the new school. This looks at our current enrollment for high school students only. We have about 384 students from the member towns. Out of district, about 198, for a total of 582 high school students only. Right now, I know for next year, we have about 45 applications from Arlington for entering the freshman class. I will look a little bit deeper into the enrollment issue right now. We looked at April 1st for the last 3 years, and where are we now? Enrollment is really a key issue in filling a new school. The new school is being built for 628 students. The building that we're in now with the old formulas was built for over 1,000 students. But we haven't had over 1,000 students in almost 30 years. So appropriately sizing the building now is an important process for us. And so where are we with the incoming freshman class? You can see the total applications from in-districts as of April 1st, or April 4th, was about 120 total applications from our 10 member towns. So that number in 2020 was 126. That was from 16 member towns. But when you look at the students' intentions, declaring their intentions to enroll, it's almost double that what it was a year ago. When we look down at out-of-district applications, you'll see 86 applications, and about 36 students have indicated their intention to enroll. We've received about 30 more applications since this was done. So I believe we're turning a corner when it comes to member district applications. And our goal is to have a freshman class every year of about 160 to 165 students, and we're on our way to that. We're going to continue to utilize some new strategies that we've employed in social media and advertising. We're engaging families more in a discussion early on. We've had great cooperation from Arlington and having our students from the high school come and talk to the students at Ottoson about their choices in high school. And I believe we're on that pathway to reach that goal of 100% target enrollment in 3 to 5 years. I will mention now that the new school building is scheduled to open a year earlier. A year earlier. That's worth an applause, absolutely. It only took 9 years to get here, but... So this is an overall look at the budget. From a high-altitude view, you'll see a reduction in revenue plan, I should say. The revenue plan shows a reduction in Chapter 78. That's projected based upon a reduction in enrollment. Regional transportation aid is up slightly. Then the whole idea of collecting tuition in this year or what we're going to collect next year, we use that as revenue to offset the assessments to our member towns. We're using just about all of our certified excess and deficiency. We have currently a certified amount of about $700,000 in there. And that gives us a total revenue of about $19.4 million, which is to fund the budget, which is lower by about almost $300,000 from last year. Expenditures by state function code, you'll see a drop in administration, a slight increase in student instructional services. That's mainly our teaching staff. Student services is down by $300,000. That's where the transportation savings are noticed. And then our health insurance, we're part of a health insurance trust. We anticipated about a 5% increase. It's coming in an actual increase of less than 2%. So we're finding some savings there as well. And you'll see the big increase over the last couple of years in our debt service line item. That $1.15 million includes the new building, the first year payment on the bond in this first set of borrowing. It also includes some debt left over from the feasibility study, as well as a small portion of debt for an ESCO project that we began paying for about 9 years ago. So overall, the budget is as you see, and that concludes my presentation, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doctor. Mr. Jameson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Gordon Jameson, Precinct 12. I have two quick questions. How did you manage to take a year out of the new school bit?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Doctor.
In the process of interviewing construction management firms, one firm in particular, Gilbane Construction, proposed a fairly aggressive schedule because of the timing of this project was perfect for them. They've also had experience in doing this, and they laid out a plan for us that is contingent upon getting our permitting, which we're in the final phases of now. But I really have to say it was Gilbane's creativity and aggressiveness in the schedule that's getting us in a year early.
Excellent. And I have another question based upon some actions that have taken in the town. Have happened here in Arlington over the past couple of years. Given your high bond rating, did you have access to a bond premium?
Yes.
And that will be you'll talk about us in future presentations?
Yes.
Because that's several $1 million we had this year.
I don't know what the exact amount is, but I think our total premium projected, if our borrowing plan hits all the milestones, is a savings of almost $6 million.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And nice presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman over here.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Topher High on Precinct 11. I have a couple questions. I noticed that there was an element of debt service in the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, I know we passed a debt exclusion last year. So is that meaning that, normally I would think it would be in a capital budget, servicing a debt. But is it the case that it's put in the operating budget?
Your assessment pays for operating and capital.
Both, okay. And then the other was just so I understand the increase. So it's about a 17.5% increase this year. Mm-hmm. It's a big jump, and that's, I gather from what Mr. DeCourcy said, that's due to the fact that we had higher enrollments before. I mean, I'm just trying to understand.
Sure.
We're about 3 times what our member average is. I understand the district shrunk in terms of member towns. Mm-hmm. But how come that's so high compared to the member?
Well, the
the
four-year
average?
rolling average, you have 3 high years of enrollment, and that's what's really
Oh, so-
driving a lot of it. If you look at the slide,
Right. I see that it's, so it goes, so it's,
you have 165, 152,
and
then
then the
120,
yeah,
120.
okay. So that's what's
That's
driving it?
accounting for a lot of the
Okay, yeah, 'cause
increase,
that-
yes.
Obviously, that wouldn't really be sustainable over the years. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Carmen?
Dean Carmen, Precinct 20. I have a question. If, after the school opens, if it goes above, if applications bring it above capacity, so we have effectively have a wait list,
Yes,
are the member towns given preference over the non-member towns?
absolutely.
So, and so this is sort of the big comment this is the comment I do want to bring up because it's a slight area of contention when we were going through the school process. And I think it's something, for years and years, we kept our eye on rebuilding Minuteman. And now I think the big thing is actually to ensure our kids have access. Because what we have right now is a situation where, 5 or 6 towns decided to leave. And then some of the other towns, I'll pick on Watertown, Waltham, Bedford, have decided not to join. And so we could find ourselves in a position after the school opens, if you look at historic trends, where there might be 700 kids who want to go to Minuteman and only 625 seats. And while I've always said when it comes to a superintendent of schools that their job is to ensure that every child who wants a vocational education should get a vocational education, I think our jobs as Arlington taxpayers is to make sure that kids get into the school which we're paying for. And as we've talked about in the past, the non-member communities don't pay as much as the member communities. And so I think while it's not a big deal this year, as we move forward, there's going to start to be pressure from some of the non-member towns to gain access to the building for their children. And I think that's something we have to, sort of take a very, I'm going to say, fiscally prudent, cold, and dispassionate view of. I mean, we're paying for the building. They chose not to. If their children can't go to the school, that's not my problem. That's the problem of their town meeting and their town leadership to figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rosa?
Michelle DeRocher, Precinct 19. I wanted to hear a little bit more about the academy model. It's not something that I'm familiar with. And can you say what some of the drivers are for implementing that? Is it about student experience or learning outcomes, or is it more about management effectiveness and fiscal issues?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I love talking about the academy model. About 6 years ago, we began, as a staff, looking at how can we serve the whole student better? How can we pay more attention to every student? We looked at a number of different models, and the academy model has been really teacher-driven. 2 years ago, I formed an academy development team, which is made up of myself, one other administrator, and 16 other teachers, from vocational teachers, special ed, academic teachers. And we've taken a lot of time to learn about this academy model and what the word academy gets used so often. It could mean anything to anyone. What it really means to us at Minuteman is a way in which a dedicated group of professional educators can deal with the individual needs of every single student in our school. 2 years ago, we asked all our academic teachers to raise their hand and which academy do you want to go into? We have a construction trades and engineering academy and a life sciences and services academy. And all the teachers chose one. So we have our English and math and science no longer have an English, math, and science department. They're part of an academy. And they teach, for instance, the math teacher teaches math through the lens of carpentry. The physics teacher teaches physics through the lens of engineering, through automotive. Our science labs in the new building are actually a little bit different in each academy to reflect science as it's related to those occupational areas. Because we've found once kids come to Minuteman, kids that may have just kind of floated through middle school, when they connect with what they're passionate about, everything else seems to make sense to them. They do better in academics, they do better in their vocational, they attend school better, they graduate at a higher rate, they begin to think of themselves as college-bound when they never thought that when they were coming to us as freshmen. The academy model strengthens that power that we seem to be able to ignite this passionate understanding of what the purpose of school is in these kids. And I really believe the academy model is the way to do it. And I don't just believe it, my teachers do. It's probably been the most satisfying thing of my career the last couple of years has been working with these teachers. And I make sure my administrators step aside and let the ideas and the vision of the teachers and staff and students percolate up, and that's what we're acting upon. So I really look forward to talking to you about the impact of the academy model, future town meetings, and as much as I can.
Thank you. That's inspiring.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. McCabe?
Mark McCabe, Precinct 2. I stand to terminate debate on Article 44 and all matters before it.
Motion to terminate debate on Article 44. All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? Debate is terminated. We have now before us the recommended vote of the Finance Committee. As soon as Mr. Lathwood's ready, we'll take our vote. All in favor of the recommended vote of the Finance Committee, please press 1 for yes. If you're against it, press 2 for no. 1 for yes, 2 for no. It's an affirmative vote, 216 in the positive, 3 in the negative. It's a vote, and I so declare it. That ends Article 44. Mr. Tosti? Thank you, Dr. Boquillan.
I move that Articles 19 through 43, through and including 43, be taken from the table.
All in favor of taking 19 through 43 off the table, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? That brings us back to Article 19, which we started the other day. And I believe Mr. Tosti has the floor.
Fellow town meeting members, first of all is Al Tosti from Precinct 3. I want to make one thing clear in my presentation, that the opinions expressed are my own and not those of the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee has not discussed this and is not making a recommendation on this article. I don't usually do this, but I strongly support the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen. In doing that, I'd like to make 4 points. First point, this position is an administrative position. It's not a policy-making position. This position, the Treasurer Collection, must follow very strict legal and process requirements to carry out their function. The chief policymakers of this town, the elected positions, are the school committee, the Board of Selectmen, and of course this town meeting. They are responsible to the voters who understand the role of each of those bodies and can make changes if warranted. Item 2, if you spread out power and responsibility over too many positions, you actually undermine, reduce the responsibility of any one position. Let me give you an example. Setting the tax rate, which happens in the fall. Very critical. Comprised really of 3 critical people: the controller that provides a lot of the data, who's appointed by the Board of Selectmen, the assessors who actually put all of the data together into the tax recap sheet, is appointed by the Board of Assessors, and the treasurer, who's at this time elected. If the tax rate doesn't get set, that's a very big deal, especially if it doesn't get set in a timely manner. Unfortunately, as it has been in past years, it's gotten set, but if it doesn't, no one's responsible, because everybody can blame somebody else in that, and there's no one person to hold it all together. Now, this town meeting recently made an important step in making the chief assessor under the day-to-day operations of the town manager. And this article will start the process. Please keep in mind, it still needs a vote of the citizens at an election, so that the responsibility for this whole process is centralized under the town manager. If the system fails, it's his responsibility to make it work. And if the town manager doesn't make it work, it's the Board of Selectmen's responsibility to make sure it gets done. The line of responsibility is clear and it's simple. A third item. Now this I plagiarized from the famous Arlington list. I don't remember who said it, but it was very simple. So an elected treasurer is responsible to his or her boss every 3 years. An appointed treasurer is responsible to his or her boss every day. And I think that's a key element to keep in mind. And finally, the last two newly elected treasurers had no competition. Now keep in mind, today, this is a job that pays $125,000 a year if you include the parking clerk money, which it has been for many years. It's a job with great benefits, and it has no requirements. Don't have to have a college degree. There are no requirements for this job as an elected position. And yet, both times, the job had one applicant. Now consider what would happen with an appointed treasurer-collector. First of all, there's a vacancy. Person might have retired, person might have had to be laid off because of non-compliance or non-performance of duties, and the town manager informs the Human Resource Department, we have a vacancy in this position. The Human Resource, working with the manager, creates a job description. The job description is therefore advertised in all the regular publications for municipal officials. Could be in the Beacon of the MMA. Person could go to the Treasurer Collectors Association, which posts these positions. Could go to the Government Finance Officers Association, the Mass one. Could go to the Accountants Association. So the job gets publicized fully. The applications come in. The applications are reviewed. Interviews are done from the final 3, 4, 5 positions. They check references, and they make an appointment. Now, my guess is that this process would probably produce 20 to 30 qualified applicants. Might produce another 20 more that are not qualified. But I think you'd probably have 20 to 30 qualified applicants. You'd probably have treasurer collectors from smaller towns looking to move up. You'd probably have assistant treasurer collectors in the larger communities also looking to move up. An appointed system would produce a good applicant base, go through a thorough review process, as is done every day in the private sector. I believe it produces the best chance to consistently get responsible and experienced treasurer collectors to perform this very valuable function that has control over $100 million of your money. I urge you to support this article. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Billifer?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mary Ellen Billifer, Precinct 11. As a previous speaker mentioned on Wednesday, Mr. Gilligan mentioned Mr. Gilligan and his predecessor. That predecessor has a name. It was John Billifer, my father, and he was elected treasurer for 33 years consecutively from 1972 to 2005. So I have permission to share his thoughts on this with town meeting in addition to sharing my own. I thought they might contribute some value to the discussion considering his many years of experience. When this issue first came up years ago, my father was quite reluctant about it. He always felt, as I believe Mr. Hayner said previously, that in addition to all the other duties, the position of treasurer also involved policymaking and should remain an independent office. However, I can say that over the years, he has come to change this opinion, and he now feels that it is definitely in the best interest of the town to make this an appointed position. My father actually spoke with Mr. Chapdelaine about this a few years ago as well, and at that time he expressed his change of heart on this also. In my discussions with him, he feels that the current leadership of the town is such that it functions with increased amount of cooperation between all the departments, obviously a very positive thing that we want to continue. An appointed treasurer, he feels, would line up with that current direction. He also stressed that when he was a young man starting out in town as an attorney, he was very interested in municipal government and excited by the idea of such a position. But he really feels and sees that things have changed, and it seems less and less likely that Arlington residents will be available or willing to leave their current well-established jobs to run for an office and take a full-time job as an elected treasurer. He feels that in order to keep professionalism and ensure quality, it's time to make this very important change. So speaking for myself now as well, our town finances have grown. Municipal finance in general is now much more complex and is only going to get more so. We need the equivalent of a CFO to manage our portfolio. It's crucial for all management to be on the same page and working collaboratively. And as we heard from Mr. Carmen before, this is already starting to happen, and from the Board of Selectmen in their report, that the departments are already collaborating. It's no longer makes sense for us to have such a key position out of the hands of our very competent town manager. Arlington has been very fortunate to date, I think, and I would like to take the opportunity actually to thank Mr. Gilligan and, of course, my father for their service to the town, and also thank Mr. Carmen for stepping in during this time of transition. But now is the time to take chance out of the equation. We would run a tremendous risk, I think, leaving this up to the electoral process. Our very competent finance committee has a lot of oversight and will keep this body informed as well. And this is about effective cash management, and our finances are just too important. We need to be able to select someone from a pool of qualified candidates with the right experience for this very critical job. Let's not leave this up to chance, and now I think is the time to make this very important change. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Warden?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Warden, Precinct 8. On top of these, following these two distinguished speakers and their viewpoints, I almost might want to say that I've changed my mind, but I didn't. I do want to say about the election of public officials, which I'm all in favor of, that a friend of mine looked at the results of the recent election, found that something like 1/6 of the town meeting members who are here this year, or who were elected this year, I hope they're all here, were not here last year. And that's a kind of a sea change that I don't recall having happened in the past. I welcome you to this august meeting, and I hope you find it a useful experience and part of your job, really, as every citizen is called to public service, to represent not just your precinct but the whole town and trying to make the best decisions. I also, since you're new, you may not realize that I myself was once infallible and sat up there on that chair, and I was elected as moderator in a field of 4 people, and was reelected by the citizens 5 times. In fact, that one big red chair, the only comfortable seat in this hall, I might add. My predecessor sat in one of those lovely plastic chairs that you're enjoying behind a card table, and I thought that the office required something better. So I dug the big red chair, part of the original furnishings of this room, out of some dusty corner of the town hall, and dusted it off and brought it out here and got a desk to sit at. The moderator before, my immediate predecessor, stood behind the podium for the entire meeting that sometimes went on for 21 sessions. I don't know how he did it. So some people have expressed the opinion that the people are not smart enough to elect the treasurer of the town. And I perhaps they are in tune with the aphorism of H.L. Mencken, who said, "You'll never go wrong underestimating the intelligence of the American voter." But in my experience here, the treasurer, Fran Coughlin, did a good job as treasurer. Mr. Billifer, whose daughter spoke to us a moment ago, a former selectman, by the way, did a good job as treasurer. And certainly Mr. Gilligan, also a former selectman, did a good job as treasurer. Since for 210 years, the election of the town treasurer has worked and served this town well. Of course, it is more efficient to have the sort of contest of qualified applicants and so on, and selection by a committee and whatnot. But in our system of government, the system that we fought for right down here at the corner 200 and odd years ago, democracy is more important than efficiency. And I think the selectman and manager would like to have more authority, more power, be more efficient, but in our system of government, in my view, efficiency is not the most important thing. The fact that we're a democracy, that we believe in the election by the people, we believe that the people have the right, the responsibility, and they're smart enough to elect the proper people, do the proper job, and I urge you to vote against Article 19. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Friedman?
Beth Ann Friedman, Precinct 15. And although I'm in favor of this article, because seeing how the position currently is unfolding, where there seems to be a great deal of cooperation between the treasurer and the various departments, and but I have some questions about how this is going to unfold. I think that if the appointment is being made by not just the town manager, but but having input from the finance committee, which are all elected officials, and also from the controller and other individuals of the town that the treasurer needs to work with final approval by the Board of Selectmen, I personally feel that that would be representative of what the voters would like. But secondly, I don't really understand how the new position, as it's evolving, what it would entail. If I understand correctly, and if I'm mistaken, Mr. Moderator, I appreciate if the treasurer would correct me, that a number of the functions of the Treasury office have been taken over by the town controller, members of the Treasury department, and also some members of that are under the town manager. And as a result, that the treasurer has more time to devote to more strategic planning, and instead of a full-time job, it's more like a part-time consultant. So I would appreciate if I have a misconception of what this position currently is becoming, if the treasurer would correct me or comment on that. Yeah, Dean, yes, it's you.
Have you been parsing out portions of your job?
Dean Carmen, Town Treasurer. No, I parsed out the whole thing, actually. No, I mean, look, look, we had an election, and as I've said to people a few times, I think Mr. Gilligan announced he was retiring on January 3rd. I think I pulled my nomination papers on January 5th, which I think was a Thursday. And then by 2 days later, I pulled up a website which was very clear in saying, if you elect me, I'm not showing up every day. I do have a fundamental belief that the treasurer should not be a full-time operational person. And I think I've been very clear in saying that. I think I was very clear early on too, which I said I think town meeting should have an opportunity to talk about it, should have an opportunity to debate it, and that in discussing it, it should be about what is right for government and government in the town of Arlington, and not what's right for individuals. I think when we talked about this 5 years ago, it became an intensely personal discussion. I think the benefit we have here tonight, and we had last night, is it's not about me, right? It's not about like what's going to happen to Dean if we vote one way or another. You know, it's not like, okay, I hate this guy, I'm going to vote to make it a point to get rid of him, or maybe there are like 3 people that like me and want to keep me around. But either way, they don't get to. So, I mean, I think that's about it right now. I mean, most of the day-to-day work, almost all the day-to-day work happens to be under Michael Morse, who's sitting in the corner, and we go from there.
So, I mean, I really think it's working the way that it's being structured, but going forward would be appointing, finding a consultant to work, 10 hours a week, whatever it evolves to be, or looking for a full-time position. I would like some clarification, of what the job description will look like.
I think if that would be Mr. Chapdelaine. If this position wins, what is the job description going to look like in the future?
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. So we are in what Mr. Carmen just described as sort of this transition period where he's the town treasurer, but the day-to-day operations are being handled by Michael Morse, who's still serving with the title of deputy treasurer. What I would envision moving forward, if this was to be successful tonight, and then successful on the ballot, and then we made the requisite changes to the bylaws and the Town Manager Act, that we would then again, more than likely have a treasurer-collector who was appointed through some process that we would appoint most likely by the town manager, perhaps approved by the Board of Selectmen, and then consider, when we look at the whole operation, whether or not we want to also have a deputy treasurer or an assistant treasurer. So I don't think anybody is saying that we don't need a treasurer-collector. I think what we're saying is we want an appointment process whereby we have a professional treasurer-collector that's hired through a professional recruitment process. So I think, I guess hypothetically, we would morph into a role where after Mr. Carmen's 3-year term was up, he wouldn't be involved as treasurer-collector. And then if Mr. Morse was still here performing in the job, we would more than likely officially make him the treasurer-collector and then consider what the appropriate staffing was for the rest of the office.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Jameson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Gordon Jameson, Precinct 12. Before I speak in support of this article, just a couple clarifications. But the treasurer has not been unopposed. Ms. Dunn, Julie Dunn, launched a nice campaign against Mr. Gilligan a couple years ago. I was confused by the assessor appointment process that was reviewed by previous speakers. Is the assessor hired through the professional hiring auspices of the manager and the personnel department and managed by the assessors? Or do the assessors hire the full-time assessor and then he's managed by the town manager? I was confused. I thought it was the first way, not the second.
Mr. Chapdelaine?
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. What this body voted to do via a special act, or an amendment to the Town Manager Act, was to have the Director of Assessing hired by the Town Manager and managed on a day-to-day basis by the Town Manager, but still report and work with the assessors, the Board of Assessors, in terms of their statutory duties. So on matters like abatements and exemptions, the assessors retained their statutory responsibilities, but day-to-day hired and reporting to the Town Manager.
Okay, Ms. Friedman inquired about the appointment process. The article is written just says appointed. could we have some more information about, the manager spoke briefly about the appointment process. Do you imagine, if I heard correctly, you imagine something similar to what the comptroller is, where the, if I understand correctly, the comptroller is hired by, or the professional, how is the comptroller hired? That's my first question. I like our comptroller, but how was he hired, since we hired one recently?
Mr. Coro's going to give you that answer.
Thank you. Joe Curo, Chair, Board of Selectmen. The comptroller is a hire. It is one hire that is directly by the Board of Selectmen. However, in the last hiring process, we did turn to our professional staff. So we turned to the manager and the deputy manager, as well as our Director of Human Services, to assist us in the vetting of comptroller candidates. And members of the board were involved in the interviewing process, and ultimately made a recommendation to the full board for ultimate appointment.
Okay, and then something I will go away. It may go to you.
Oh, that's not your job.
Something I learned in talking to Mr. Carmen during before the election was, I did not know previously, and I usually know these things, that the deputy treasurer is actually appointed by the Board of Selectmen as well.
That is correct.
And the process for hiring the current deputy treasurer was similar to the comptroller?
It was similar to the comptroller.
Okay, and the deputy treasurer reports currently to the treasurer?
That is correct.
Okay, and the assessor, it reports to the manager. The deputy treasurer reports to the treasurer.
Correct.
And the comptroller reports to the Board of Selectmen.
That is correct.
Okay. And the deputy town manager, I assume, and the assistant town manager report to the manager. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so
Mr. Carmen wants to clarify a point.
Okay.
Regarding those
So-
reporting chains.
So, well, Mr. Carmen, yep.
Just on a clarification, so the deputy town treasurer, as of 2 weeks ago, by a memorandum of understanding between Sandy and I, reports to me and Sandy, not just me at the moment. I just want to clarify
And that's something that you can do in your position of treasurer, you can delegate.
We have a memorandum of understanding, an agreement that say Michael is currently accountable to both.
Okay, and the hiring process for the next treasurer, can we have any insights on that, given the current position of the deputy treasurer
Have you
acting?
guys even gotten there yet? Go ahead.
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. If I may, Mr. Moderator, one quick point. A little bit of nuance here. The comptroller is a direct appointment of the Board of Selectmen. So the selectmen get to lay out how many candidates they want to see, who they interview, and what selection they make. The deputy treasurer's appointment is actually only approved by the Board of Selectmen. So the treasurer currently interviews and selects and brings one person before the Board of Selectmen, and they ratify that appointment, just to be very clear about the current structure.
Okay, and so if I've heard this correctly, the new treasurer may be someone appointed by the professional staff of the manager's office in conjunction with personnel with Carolyn Cove Malloy, and then approved by the Board of Selectmen.
So that would be...
We have to do a bylaw for that, yes.
That would be my intention, but again, this body would have to approve a bylaw and amendments to the town manager.
Okay,
Act to
and I
codify.
have one last question. Perhaps the town council might address this, Mr. Moderator. Is the word appointed as the suggested vote on the annual town election ballot too open? Does that need to be specified more clearly so the voters know what they're voting for?
Oh, lawyers like things loose.
I'm not going to touch that one.
I'm not either. The ballot question is essentially as the state prefers it. So the state doesn't necessarily mandate, but that is what the state recommends. This is really a three-stage process. The town meeting approves this action tonight, or we put it on the ballot, and then if the voters approve it, then the town would have to basically develop an appointment process. And as Mr. Chapdelaine has noted, would probably have to amend both the Town Manager Act and establish and amend the town bylaws to reflect the appointment process we would want. But the ballot question is pretty much following exactly how
And would the council anticipate writing a comment on the vote that would be present at the ballot during the election, so that people could see what the process might be?
What I anticipate is having information available to voters. That the appointment process, there might be something that folks envision, but the appointment process is going to have to be decided by, town meeting in terms of what town meeting will ultimately authorize to go before for both special legislation and for town bylaw.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Moderator. And again, I support this article.
There was a gentleman over to my left on the third row wearing a suit the other night. I didn't know his name. He was right around there somewhere. Were you wearing a suit the other night? Yeah? Did you have your hand up Monday? Or Wednesday? Okay. If I don't know you, it's a good...
Don't know me. My name is Judd Pierce, Precinct 11. I rise in opposition to this. My concern is that this would lead to a consolidation of the finance departments as a whole in this town. And I really want the school finance department and the town's finance department to work together harmoniously, but to work together with distinct responsibilities. My concern is that this is just a step in consolidating and having perhaps the school's finance officer report to the town manager, not our school superintendent. I think there are checks and balances in this town that we should respect that have worked well for us for a number of years, and that's why I'm standing in opposition to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Judson. Not recognizing you. Mr. Oster?
Adam Oster, Precinct 3. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. One question that I've heard in connection with this issue over the years is, why would you ever, especially in a town like Arlington, surrender the power to vote for somebody to some sort of bureaucratic process? And I think it's a fair question. I think it's a good question. And I think it's a question that if we put this before voters, we're likely to hear. It seems to me that how you feel about the issue probably depends a lot on your idea of what it is the treasurer does. In particular, is the job like that of the selectman or of the town moderator, or is it like the job of the town council? Is it a professional position like the chief of police or the school superintendent? Or is it, in the best sense, political and civic, like the school committee or the town clerk? Based on what I know about the job, I think the treasurer is a lot more like the professional positions than the policy ones. I can only suppose that those who oppose this change see it the other way. Let me say a little bit more about the distinction that I would draw. When our fire chief retires, the town will conduct a search and hire from a pool of candidates that meet specific qualifications. Now, if it were an elected position and that candidate, best candidate, lived in Arlington, he or she might get the job through an election just as well as through a qualifications-based screening process. But the person might not live in Arlington, might not be good at politics, might not want to expose him or herself to the whole public process, and the odds that the town would miss out by electing the fire chief are significant, and the odds that we would do better are very small. The position of town moderator also involves skill and professionalism, but we don't hire that person, we elect them. At the heart of the job is an intimate connection with the community. We couldn't possibly hire that, it would be impossible. The treasurer doesn't write the budget that we vote on every year, and I would argue that he or she actually does not have nearly as much to do with what our bond rating is as the conduct of this town meeting. A big part of the job is dealing with Wall Street in a fundamentally technical way, just like the town council who advises the town and deals in a professional, technical way with the courts when it can't be avoided. Now, the financial world has changed profoundly since the deregulation in the 80s and the 90s, and it is full of sharks. You would not hire a non-lawyer to represent the town. We shouldn't choose a non-professional, whatever his or her background, to deal with Wall Street. After the financial markets imploded in 2008, a number of Massachusetts towns had to ask the Attorney General to go after these sharks and get some of their money back because they'd been had. We don't want that to happen to Arlington a second time. We're going to be asking the voters of this town to increase their taxes substantially to pay for schools. I want you to imagine talking to someone who's living on a fixed income, who asks you to explain why he or she should vote to take a tax hit when the town did nothing to limit the real loss of tax revenues. And one other thing that I want to say. The town has benefited tremendously from professional management. Having qualified professional staff who work for the elected policymakers is not anti-democratic. It's not disrespectful of the people. It empowers the people. It allows the representatives to do what the people have elected them to do. So that's my answer to the question, why would you ever give this away? You'd give it away if the risks are substantial of error, and if what you're losing is not an essential civic quality. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. It's 9:30. Let's take our 7-minute break and go buy cookies from the Minuteman kids. Yeah. Okie dokie. Mr. Tully has the floor. Please come in and sit down. Mr. Tully has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Joe Tully, Precinct 14.
Joe, you got to speak right into the microphone.
We need a longer microphone.
Quiet, please.
Joe Tully, Precinct 14.
Shh. Quiet, please.
I want to take you for a little walk down memory lane, but I'm still kind of reeling from the fact that the global fiscal crisis of 2008 could have been avoided if we all had a bunch of appointed town treasurers. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you got to lean right into it.
I've known the Billafer family for almost 40 years, and I think I'm probably one of many that owe them a great debt of gratitude for their tradition of public service to this town. I did have a chance to talk to John Billafer myself this evening, and so with a great deal of respect for him and everybody else that served in this capacity, I still think that this is a case of a solution looking for a problem. Last time we met, and I don't mean to pick on Ms. LaCourte, but she noted that she often rises when this issue comes up, and she gives her position on this matter. And when she rises, I generally rise to remind her and everybody else that I served on a committee that she chaired where we looked at this very issue, and we concluded that the elected treasurer model was working just fine for Arlington. Now, of course, reasonable people are entitled to change their minds, and sometimes circumstances change. But as far as I know, there's been no real significant change in circumstance since that committee commenced its work. As I see this issue, it really boils down to one good point to be made on each side. An appointed treasurer allows the selectmen to handpick someone that has the requisite expertise for the job, and thereby avoiding a situation where a popular candidate without the proper credentials might be elected. Note the might. On the other hand, an elected treasurer maintains a certain separation of power and autonomy from being beholden to or even manipulated by another town authority. So on the one hand, we have a hypothetical, and it's a legitimate, genuine concern, but it is a hypothetical. It's only a possibility. On the other hand, if we move to an appointed treasurer, it's a given that we lose the autonomy of the office. So you might be asking, well, what happens if the hypothetical, in fact, comes to fruition? I'm glad you asked. We already have a built-in fail-safe for what we're being told is the rationale behind this article. Specifically, the hiring of the deputy town treasurer is subject to the approval of the selectmen. There's already a system in place to make sure that we have a subject matter expert in a leadership role in the office. So when you hear other speakers rise to suggest that we can't be certain that Mr. Carmen's new organization chart will survive after he leaves office, don't believe that little bit of rhetorical trickery. Regardless of what any current or future treasurer does, the deputy treasurer is already subject to approval by selectmen. Additionally, on its own merits, there are good reasons to maintain the autonomy of an elected treasurer. Some speakers have tried to tell you that the job is mostly operational and involves only a minimal policymaking role. I would argue that it's a cornerstone of municipal finance that the individual in charge of the town's debt and financing be independent and objective and not subject to pressures from his or her employer. For example, envision a scenario where a board of selectmen might be under pressure to advocate for a politically popular position that may not be in the town's best financial interest. Do you want an independent, autonomous treasurer to be a check and a balance? Or do you want someone whose objective opinion may place him or her in a conflict of interest with his or her job security? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fisher?
Andrew Fisher, Precinct 6. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's a little more difficult to make my case knowing Mr. Billafer changed his mind, but I want to try to persuade you anyway to keep this elected position. I think it's our only chance to elect a full-time official who knows the budget inside out. You can possibly speak independently about how and why the town should follow certain revenue strategies and how to assess whether they're working out. Just to be provocative, I'll say he's the only one that can make independent recommendations outside of the dogma of the Pioneer Institute and our other local think tanks. Here's some concrete examples. One of the great pressures placed on town meeting, in my experience, I guess since 1991, is to approve new types of high-density growth because it's going to solve our fiscal problems. I can't expect a selectman to know the budget inside and out and to be able to stand outside of the whole thing and look at it. In the way that Mr. Billafer was able to stand outside of all the pressure that was put on him to put all the money into the statewide pension fund management system around 2005, 2006. He finally yielded. That was a Pioneer Institute recommendation. It was right on the webpage. It included hedge funds. And all the towns lost enormous money, don't get me wrong, but I believe that everyone agrees Arlington lost more money and all the towns that joined lost more money, and we would have lost more money if we had put it all in. It went from 140 million down to 104. Now it's back up to 139. It still would have happened, but I'm talking, it's a political position because there's enormous pressure put on that person. And the good thing was at that time, at least there was a wide open discussion of it. There was a warrant article about whether to do it, and it was a public process. So people should remember that when they say we've done so well under professionalism, because it was the professionals that were harassing the amateur to make the mistake in that case. So routinely, recommend let's build all these two-family houses. That was another professional product. In the 90s, I don't know, not sure if it was the ABC study or what. This is an example of why we need a clear assessment. Outside professionals recommended. Arlington has high turnover. People move in, they move out. So everybody should build two-bedroom apartments. Some of the downstream effect of that is that we're being asked to approve garages on the first floor, things like that, 5-story buildings. And lo and behold, nobody makes the connection, well, can we ever possibly make enough money from that to overcome the fiscal deficit, the structural deficit? And I haven't seen anybody exactly make the connection between the millions of dollars, I think it's in the millions, that we're spending on portable classrooms. The last time I said something like this, I got accused of being unwelcoming. I welcome everybody of all colors. But let's have open discussion of all this stuff. And for the fun of it, I'd like to ask, since it's not a policy-making position and it shouldn't be elected, does that mean that the head of planning should be elected? Because they make policy all the time. How are we going to decide whether to vote for millionaire's tax without knowing how that's going to affect Arlington? Now, I must be naive to even say the words income tax in town meeting. That was the main argument to build Sims, was those who opposed were naive. There was no, I'm going to lose it if I get into that, I'm sorry. Where's it come from that there's a parking place in front of my house, and for 30 years, 50 years.
Andy, bring it back to the treasurer.
Well, what's the percentage of our fiscal crisis can be solved by doing things like charging $200 by violating the tradition of allowing someone to park where they park, like on Lombard Terrace or Swan Place? Where does it come from that it has a market value? When we negotiated what that price should be, the town manager said there should be a market value on it. Where'd that come from? The people of Arlington? So I would like to be able to vote for a town treasurer that would be willing to assess just how a raised income tax would work out. I'd like to know, as Charlie Lyons used to complain, he said if you build up a trust fund too much, you get less state aid. I would like to be able to vote for a town treasurer that can assess that situation. So I agree that it should be an independent thing. And I would ask yourself, are we all going to be Hamiltonian Democrats? You have to have some faith that it'll work out. There are plenty of safeguards built in. So thank you. I would vote against this.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Deist?
John Dice, Precinct 13, and I'm a member of the Finance Committee. For the last 10 years or so, during which Dean Carmen has been on the Finance Committee, I have come to realize what an expert he is in finances. Almost every time that there's a detailed question about where money ought to be placed, or some other question about OPEB or any of the other kinds of things that are fairly complex relative to finances, Dean almost always has the right answer for the Finance Committee. So I have enormous regard for Dean Carmen, and I was delighted to hear of his plan when he began to run for treasurer, which is to say, to place him in that office and to work with another person with whom I have enormous regard, which is to say our town manager. So I happen to think that we have almost the perfect situation to figure out what this office ought to be, because we really don't quite know what it's going to be right now if we transition to non-elected treasurer. The two of them will work together, I suggest, for about 3 years, during which time, if this is approved and the town itself votes for an appointed rather than an elected treasurer, the two of them, that is to say, Dean Carmen, the expert financial person, and our manager, Adam Chapdelaine, who is a wonderful administrator, will be able to figure out how it is that all the different things that have to get done will get done, because they'll be doing it in real time for the next 3 years. So by the time it is that we actually do then maybe go to an appointed treasurer, they will know pretty precisely how it should work and how to make it work well for us. And I will say as well that I think that while we have had two excellent elected town treasurers, that is to say, Mr. Billiver and Mr. Gilligan, you don't know really what you're going to get in any way with an elected person. So I strongly advocate that you vote yes on this article. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gilligan, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Stephen Gilligan, town meeting member from Precinct 13. And this is my 41st consecutive annual town meeting. Years ago, John Fitzmaurice came to me and said, "Stephen, I miss your passionate speeches. This might be one of them, but I'll try and refrain. I want to correct some of the spin that you've been hearing tonight and that you heard last week in my absence when I was unavoidably out of town. First, you heard someone tonight say with an appointed treasurer, "Oh, gee, I envision at least 20 applicants." Well, let me tell you what's happening across the Commonwealth with appointed treasurers. There are 107 finance officer positions in cities and towns across the state that are not being filled in the appointed process because the people applying don't have the passion for their community and do not have the requisite understanding of government or public finance. That's a fact. And if you don't believe it, you can check the minutes of the Massachusetts Government Finance Officers Association. And by the way, I am a member of the New England States Government Finance Officers Association. The city of Brookline has had a vacancy for their treasurer for a year because they are reluctant to hire private sector people who don't have the capacity to learn quickly. What Brookline selectmen have been saying is that they are now considering reverting to an elected treasurer because they understand that people in their community who run for office have the zeal, the passion, and the wherewithal to do the job. The city of Quincy, 2 years ago, reverted to an elected treasurer because the voters decided that the mayor and the city council had too much power and control and were not being transparent and were disallowing the distribution of information that was being requested. You've heard that, oh gee, you can't trust the voters. Selectmen and former selectmen in this audience, members of town meeting, have said, and I quote, actually I can't quote because I was told this, "The voters will elect any old fool." Yet the selectmen and former select persons seek those votes. The people who want to control the treasurer's office want to tell the voters, "You don't understand. We'll tell you." They want to take the right of the voter away, but then also turn around and stand on a soapbox and say, "Vote for me and I will set you free." Let's talk about why having an elected treasurer and collector of taxes is important. Mr. Fisher touched upon it. Mr. Hayner touched upon it last week as I looked at the transcript. Mr. Tully touched upon it. Mr. Warden touched upon it. We poo-poo our democracy too often these days. Elected officials, in their autonomous capacity, create checks and balances that protect the people in a community. That's the residences, the taxpayers, and the voters. Under an appointed treasurer, the Board of Selectmen and/or town manager will control the following: how money is collected, how money is deposited, and in what financial institution, a reputable institution or my cousin Vinny's. How debt is managed, how we will borrow, the manner of the borrowing. The treasurer is the banker of the town. The treasurer has no responsibility or authority for spending money, but in protecting and being the custodian of the town's funds. You are all elected as town meeting members to do what's right for the residents, taxpayers, and voters of the town. And yet you are being asked to take the right of the voters away. How can you, or even I, as a town meeting member, say, vote for me, when I don't trust you to vote for somebody else? False claims have been made over the last several days, including tonight. For example, the 2008 financial debacle that was created by public sector appointed managers who took ARC's auction rate certificates and securitized them and sold them to governments and to the public, and that's what made our financial system go belly up. Did that impact the town? Yes, it did. I was accused this evening of being responsible for that, as I was in the past, and yet I, as an elected treasurer, sought remedy. Appointed treasurers in Massachusetts did not do that. I did. I was told by the town council at the time, who I have immense respect for, don't bother, you're not going to get anywhere. The town doesn't have the budget to give you to spend the money to litigate. It requires special legal counsel, and in 3 years, you're just going to be spitting in the wind. As an elected treasurer, I said, that's not what the people of Arlington elected me for. So I started placing phone calls and eventually got to the right desk in the Attorney General's office. Not only was it the right desk, but the Attorney General herself said, the treasurer in Arlington is absolutely right. I went after one of the largest financial institutions in the country and won. And cities and towns and nonprofits across Massachusetts recovered $333 million. Appointed treasurers in the state said, Stephen, never thought anybody could do that, because that's life. An elected treasurer has the passion to serve the people in the community. It was mentioned that the treasurer has nothing to do with the bond rating. Wrong.
You have 5 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I asked for a 2-minute extension.
Too late. You have to do that before you start speaking.
All right.
Sum up.
I'll sum up. It was mentioned that the bond rating is not helped by the town treasurer. The town of Arlington had an AA2 bond rating for years. I made it a goal to go after it. Now, it's not all me, and it's not all the treasurer's office, but the primary rating source of a credit rating is the treasurer's office, with debt management, investment management, and cash management. We didn't get the bump up. We got a double bump up to AAA. That saves us hundreds of thousands of dollars every time we borrow money. And that's happened since 2007 with the last 14 consecutive borrowings.
Thank you, Mr. Gilligan.
I ask you to vote this warrant article down. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Ma'am, you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Michelle Phelan. I'm a new town meeting member from District 4. Just a couple of quick questions. Has the town ever fired a treasurer for incompetence? And the second question is, what would the current process be for replacing an incompetent treasurer? Is there a special election? Does the deputy take over?
I don't believe we've ever fired one, but Mr. Heim can answer the second part of the question.
Doug Heim, Town Council. The current process is a petition for recall. So the first thing that would happen is 50 registered voters in the town would have to submit an affidavit to the town clerk stating which official they want to recall and the grounds. Then if they have about 20 days to get 20% of the registered voters in the town to sign their petition, if they get that number of voters, then there's either an opportunity for that official to resign, or there would be a central election to put forward the limited question of whether that official should be recalled or not.
It would be a special election.
Under most circumstances, a special election, unless there's a regular election happening within a certain window, yes.
Is that treasurer, would that person stay in office until that special election happened, or would the deputy take over until such time that the election happened?
I have to be honest, I'm not 100% certain on that, but I would presume that because it's a recall petition that goes to the voters, that the person would remain in office and working unless and until that petition was successful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's that, sir?
Stephen Gilligan, Precinct 13. Mr. Moderator, is not Town Council aware of the fact that the Board of Selectmen can remove a treasurer for malfeasance without a special election?
He must not be aware of that provision, sir. Is that in the Town Manager Act?
State law, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wagner, you were next on the list. Mr. Wagner is no longer there. Carl? Carl went home. Mr. Paluso? Ted?
Ted Paluso, precinct number 6, if I remember right. Okay, you got a fascinating thing here. I served on the Government Reorganization Committee for about 3 or 4 years. Complete frustration, okay, for whatever that means. I came to know Stephen Gilligan. Fantastic man, fantastic treasurer. I would vote for him until the day I died or he died. Okay? I came to know John Billifer, but not as a treasurer. I've only been here for 9 years. I would vote for him. I don't know anybody else. Now, it's an interesting problem because we're saying we have to trust the voters to come up with the right decision. Were you guys around in November 2016? Did I miss something here? Now, I'm not saying we can't trust the voters, but from what I'm hearing now is this is going to go to the voters. So accordingly, we're saying that if we think it should go to the voters, we don't want it to go to the voters because we don't trust them to say yes or no. If I'm misunderstanding something, tell me differently. The other thing, for whatever it's worth, is how many people are running? He's the only guy I know. Where's the other guy who wanted to be the elected treasurer? I mean, did somebody at that table get them all together and say, nobody should run because we got this big plan? You know what? When you come down to it, you never know what's going to happen in the long run. Will you get us, Stephen Gilligan? God bless you. I hope you will. if the voters decide to continue the same way, right? But you know, I have to tell you, somebody elected me to this town meeting. Four people, right? And you might know me or you might not know me, but sometimes I wonder why the hell they did that.
Mr. McCabe?
Mark McCabe, Precinct 2. I stand to terminate debate on Article 19 and all matters before it.
We have motion to terminate debate. It's been seconded. All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? It's a two-thirds vote, and I so declare it. That brings us to the recommended vote on Article 19 as printed in the Board of Selectmen report. As soon as Mr. Lathwood's ready, we will vote 1 for yes and 2 for no. It's an affirmative vote, 154 in the positive, 57 in the negative. Affirmative vote, and I so declare it. That closes Article 19 and brings us to Article 21. That was on the consent, but somebody took it off the consent agenda. Someone have a substitute motion on Article 21, whoever took it off the consent agenda. You have a substitute motion, sir? Well, how come we haven't seen it yet? You have a substitute motion on 21. The vote, it's a no action vote. That's what we're going to vote on. I'm wondering why someone took it off the consent agenda. Because they didn't have one. All right, all in favor of no action, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? Unanimous vote of no action, and I so declare it. Thank you, sir. So unless you have a substitute motion, don't take it off the consent agenda, please. Number 20, that closes Article 21 and brings us to number 22. Mr. Coro.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Joe Curo, Chairman, Board of Selectmen. With your permission, I'd like to discuss 22, 23, 24, and 25 as a package.
That's right. We're going to discuss all of 22, 3, 4, and 5 as a package and take individual votes on each one of those articles. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. First of all, I'd like to thank Ms. Bongiorno. She's the director of our Health and Human Services Department. She worked with the Council on Aging, the Veterans Council, the Commission on Disability, as well as with the Board of Assessors on the package of articles that are before you, and it really is a package of articles. We move on from treasurer and tax collector to tax relief. So the articles before you really target some specific relief measures that we are permitted to adopt as a town meeting, targeted at our the seniors and disabled, veterans, and veterans. The first two are actually work-off programs in which seniors and disabled, as well as veterans, are permitted to do a certain amount of work which will be credited towards their tax bills. If they're not able physically to perform the work, they are allowed to have an approved representative. And you can read in the recommended votes the specific limits for each of them. It's $1,500 for senior and disabled, and for veterans it's $1,000. The next article concerns a checkoff fund on the tax bills, which would allow us to create an elderly and disabled taxation fund. It's similar to the way that the Dollars for Scholars works. And lastly is a recommendation to allow indexing of some of the asset and income limits for certain forms of tax relief. Currently, they're although we've accepted the state legislation around this, they're kind of frozen, those limits are frozen. This would allow them to rise with inflation so that people wouldn't be pushed out of eligibility just as a result of inflation. The board respectfully requests your support of all four of these recommended votes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so if anyone has any questions on 22, 3, 4, or 25, now's the time to raise them. Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Leonard, Precinct 17. Some questions, if I may. Will these programs be open to both men and women?
Of course.
Second question is, if an individual who is on one of these programs is injured, who covers the workman's comp while the person is out? Does the town pay for it?
Mr. Chapdelaine or Mr. Heim? Mr. Heim will take that.
Doug Heim, Town Council. If somebody's injured doing volunteer work for the town, they might be covered by the town if it depends a little bit on the scope of the project, but they'd probably be covered not under workers' comp, but as a volunteer of the town. Thank you.
Next question, Mr. Moderator. When these people are being trained for these positions, will they be paid while they're being trained?
Yeah, Mr. Coro, they don't get paid at all, correct? They just work off their taxes? Mr. Chapdelaine or Mr. Coro, one or the other? Well, Mr. Heim's going to answer it.
So it depends on the program, John, but if the program, if the way the programs are set up, the training is required in order to execute the duties, it certainly could be eligible for the tax work-off. It depends a little bit on what the qualifications are for the various different occupation or volunteer work that they might do.
Next question, will any people be displaced or relocated during this process? As if to say, with new people coming in, will any people be displaced or relocated from their existing positions?
Chapdelaine, please.
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager, no.
And final question, could somebody answer me why the seniors reduction is 1,500 and the vets is 1,000? Why not make them both 1,500?
Mr. Coro? Oh, Mr. Heim.
Those amounts are set by the state statute.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Sir. Mr. Jameson?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Gordon Jameson, Precinct 12. For those who are paying attention, these are in addition to the long-standing Harry Barber effort that we've had to help seniors earn some money against taxes. I think that also works for that. Are these subject to 1099? I asked the question because of the word volunteer and the original wording of the article in the discussion. Or is this something that flows directly to their tax bill without taxation?
Mr. Carmen?
Dean Carmen, Town Treasurer. So, I guess I'm not speaking at the Treasurer. As an accountant, I will tell you that there are a numerous number of IRS letter rulings on these topics of tax work-off programs, and they're very consistent in saying that it does meet the definition of constructive receipt, so it is taxable income to the person. Now, with that being said, just to cut off the next series of questions, since they do usually have low income requirements, if you think about how that construct works on taxability of Social Security, and you have to meet another income threshold, you have standard deductions, other deductions, things like that, you'd never actually get to the point of it being taxable income. It would just sort of float through.
Okay, so these parameters, these programs do have a income thing? I didn't get that from the discussion I read.
Well, it's not in the text, but if you,
It's in the MGL.
it's in the IRS regulations.
Okay. Oh, for this?
Yeah,
No.
the IRS is very consistent that tax work-off programs are constructive receipt of income, therefore they are taxable income to the person receiving it.
You said that there were income limitations on being able to participate. Is that the case?
I think what his point is, you'll get a 1099, but your income's so low, you're in a zero tax bracket, so you're not going to pay taxes. Is that essentially it, Mr. Carmen?
Yes.
Okay. I want to thank the Director of Health and Human Services and through the manager putting these forth for our consideration. I had a nice discussion with her earlier in the meeting, and I think that she and the manager will be able to report on the effectiveness of these articles and the Harry Barber, so we can determine, especially with the reference to the Harry Barber, which has a $7,500 annual limit, versus these are per person limits, that we can review the progress and the impact of these articles on the applicable seniors. Unbelievably, I can actually do this, so I recommend a positive vote. So I look forward to hearing in the future reports back on the progress of these actions and to help our seniors. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Deist? Pass. Mr. Moore?
Christopher Moore, Precinct 14. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm supporting these articles because I think there's a great benefit to the individuals who are involved, but I do have a question about how it affects the town as a whole. Have we made an estimate of how much it will cost the town in cash receipts of taxes?
Coral, have you made that estimate? Mr. Chapdelain's consulting his electronic device.
Look at this. Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. So we do have proposed caps in hours, though it won't actually reduce how much we collect. These will be paid for out of what we put aside in overlay. This amount of money that we put aside to fund tax abatements and exemptions, this is where these monies will come from. So we don't actually collect less money, but we would withdraw via the Board of Assessors from the overlay account. But for example, we would propose in the initial year for the senior work-off program to limit it to a maximum of 20 residents. For the veterans program, I don't think we've talked about a limit. So we would have a cap on the senior work-off program.
And those caps would be evaluated annually?
Yeah, I think if we were fully subscribed, we'd have to give a look at whether or not we wanted to expand it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we were not fully subscribed, we'd probably try to find a way to get it fully subscribed.
That makes sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Quinn? Pass. Yep, pass. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Peter Fuller from Precinct 20. The motions under 22 and 23 talk about allowing approved representatives to do the work where the seniors or veterans are physically unable. And the question is who decides whether the people are physically unable and who approves the representatives?
Director of Personnel is going to take that.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Christine Bonjourner, Director of Health and Human Services. I think there are a few areas that still need to be worked out logistically as far as determining eligibility or ineligibility, I guess, as far as working and being able to do the work. That's something I think we would look to other communities for guidance on. I know there are a number of other communities that have such work-off programs with similar guidelines in place. So I think we would be looking to the other communities to see how they've set that up.
One more question. Would it be possible for Arlington High School students to be the approved representatives and themselves earn the community service hours they need to graduate?
I don't think they can double dip.
Hope that was clear.
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. I guess the best I could say is, absent us finding some legal prohibition to that, which I don't think exists in the statute, that sounds like a great thing for us to pursue.
Okay, thank you. I think we should approve all of these. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Foskett?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Charles Foskett, Precinct 8. A question I have is, let's assume that we had 100 people that took advantage of these work-offs, and it was $1,500 each. That means that these parties would have absorbed about $150,000 of town expense. Will we see that show up in reductions in the town budgets?
Mr. Chapdelaine?
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. Similar to the answer I gave to Mr. Leonard's question about displacement of existing workers. No, the aim here is to not to reduce town staff or workforce, but rather to provide a benefit, provide a valuable service, but also to be providing this benefit to the seniors who may enroll in the program.
I think what his question was is if it costs us $150,000, is the budget going to be reduced by $150,000, or you're getting the money from some other place? Correct, Mr. Foskett?
I think we're taking a hit on the taxes with these programs somehow. If you move the overlay around, that's fine, but it still means we're collecting less taxes. And the principle is that we're collecting less taxes because these individuals are performing valuable work. And if they're performing valuable work that would need to otherwise be done, then the budget should be down by some amount because the work is getting done and we're paying for it.
So I suppose I would answer this in a different way. There is zero intention to lay off any staff based on the offering of these programs, at least at this current time. And from a union point of view, a labor management point of view, I don't believe we'd be able to approach it in that manner anyways.
Is that the only way that you can adjust the budget is by laying people off?
I suppose we could also look at outsourced work, but to be very real, I think most of the time these programs get at work in offices that possibly now isn't getting done. Extra hand to answer calls, filing work, preparation of mailings, things that either could be done by an existing staff or often are pushed off to another day when there's more time available.
So it's work that doesn't need to be done?
Thank you. I guess anybody could spend a day in my office and see that there's plenty of things that could be done today, but often go on to another day just given the bulk of the workload in the town.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Revelac? Back in the center. Pass. Ms. Mamone?
Serena Memon, Precinct 21. I stand to terminate debate on these Articles 22, 23, 24, 25, and all matters related to them.
Motion to terminate debate on all four articles. It's been seconded. All in favor of terminating debate, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? It is a 2/3 vote, and I so declare it. So we're going to go through these one at a time. It'll be a 1 for a yes vote and 2 for no on all four of them. As soon as you're ready, Mr. Lathwood, we'll take the vote on number 22. An affirmative vote, 202 in the positive, 5 in the negative. It's affirmative vote, and I so declare it. That terminates Article 22, brings us to Article 23. Lathwood, when you please. Article 23, 1 for yes, 2 for no. 199 in the positive, 7 in the negative. It's an affirmative vote, and I so declare it. And that closes Article 23 and brings us to Article 24. Lathwood, when you're ready. Article 24, 1 for yes, 2 for no. It's also an affirmative vote, 201 in the affirmative, 5 in the negative. That's a positive vote, and I so declare it. Brings it Article to 25. Mr. Lathwood, when you're ready. One for yes, 2 for no on Article 25. $199 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. It's affirmative vote, and I so declare it. That closes Article 25. Brings us to Article 26. Coro.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Joe Curo, Chair, Board of Selectmen. You have before you acceptance of legislation for establishing a parking benefits district. This is an issue which I think the Board of Selectmen really sees as a central part of our economic development approach for Arlington Center. You'll recall that earlier at our special town meeting, this town meeting adopted kind of a mild stick, really, to try to encourage economic development in Arlington Center. This is more of a carrot. The proposal you have before you is also a continuation of a discussion that began probably 5 years ago here in town meeting, where we talked about the potential of implementing meters, and that led to a long study and the implementation of parking demand management to try to encourage turnover in front of our retail and restaurant establishments in the center, and to encourage longer-term parkers to go to the lots. In the back. So I think everybody is now, by this time, you've seen the meters. They've been in operation for quite a few months now. I know that just for the lots themselves, just for the lots themselves, the revenue collections for the first 3 months of this year are about $6,500 greater than what they were in the first 3 months of last year. Now, that's not including the meters, which have the free 15-minute button, which has been pushed at this point, we must be up to about 70,000 times. I'm not exaggerating. It's true. It's true. The idea of a parking benefits district is a tool that is provided to communities to try to spur improvements within a district with parking meters. And what we have before you is a proposal to allow us to take the net new revenue that's coming in from those meters, just the net new revenue. We're not talking about existing enforcement revenue or anything like that, just the net new revenue, and put it back into the district. So put it back either into sidewalk or road improvements or beautification of the street. It could be public art. It could be pedestrian or other commuter improvements, so that those who are coming into that district and are using paying for the use of those parking spots will see a benefit over the long run. And we'll see a benefit over the long run to the commercial districts as well, which we know drive quite a bit of the revenue here in our town as well. When we had the discussion on this, I know my colleague, Mr. Byrne, who has something of a professional specialty in this area, he cited, the case of Old Pasadena, California, which was an area which had seen kind of a downturn in its commercial area. It instituted a parking benefits district, and it was really kind of a renaissance because they were able to put in lighting improvements and able to put in streetscape improvements and things like that and really target them and leverage the economic activity there. So the Board of Selectmen respectfully requests your positive vote on this. And I know that the town manager is also ready and available to answer any other specific questions you might have on this. One last point I would make is that we do have made a commitment that even though we're not required by law to do so, we would come back with the plans each year. We'd bring them to the Capital Planning Committee or to town meeting, similar to the way that we do CDBG, which is the next article on the warrant, each year for endorsement and in the interest of transparency as to how these revenues are used. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jameson?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Gordon Jameson, Precinct 12. So there's 2, perhaps 3 articles that deal with parking, if you've been paying attention and reading ahead. What I've just heard, I'm in favor of 26 as long as I have a few questions answered related to that and how it relates to the other articles. If I understand correctly, either last year or last fall at the special, we made it's not a revolving fund, the manager told me, but we made a special fund for parking receipts. Could we have some information on what goes into that fund and
Mr. Chapdelaine?
And how it might flow into this benefits district?
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. Mr. Jameson, you're correct. In October at the special town meeting, this body accepted a statute that allowed for the creation of a parking fund that could both receive parking receipts from meter revenue as well as pay costs or expenses associated with the management of the parking district where the meters are located.
And
so
that, while not within the Article 30, I think it is, revolving fund report from the Board of Selectmen, it funds, it operates, or whichever article has all the numbers in it. From, I guess it's in the maybe 39. It functions like a revolving fund, but it's distinct.
Yeah, correct. So Article 39 puts forward an expenditure plan for monies that would be coming out of that parking fund to pay for parking costs, both distinctly from that fund and offsetting some general fund costs associated with parking management. So that is what Article 39 is. Article 26, if accepted, would create a parking benefit district fund that would really live within that greater parking fund, whereby any revenues in surplus collected from both on-street meters and lot meters would be able to go towards a parking benefit district.
Okay, and Article 39 was the one that had the appropriation. I note that the appropriation has some offsets in it. Will the benefits of those positions be covered both at the pension and health care level? Because what we're having here is money that's outside, that's being brought into town, and I want, as we've discussed over the years in the revolving fund, I want to ensure that it's bearing the full cost of the services that are being paid for and rendered.
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. What is in Article 39 are just the actual salaries and expense amounts associated with both the employees and the expenses they incur. I think we would actually have to take a closer look at whether or not the statute allows us to charge benefit costs. If we would, I think we certainly would look to do that, because I agree with the concept you just laid out.
Okay, so I look forward to a report on that in next year's articles and on the floor of town meeting. So I think the Finance Committee is looking carefully at this in my discussions with a couple of the members and in their report on the expenditure articles. So what we're looking at here is establishing another way with monies that are received by the town are put into a special fund. And even though we get to look at them, which is a nice thing, like the CBDG funds, we no longer get to appropriate them. And so this is something that I think we should always be very careful in allowing. I had a very nice, in addition to the discussion we just had now, I had a very nice chat with the manager 6 or 8 weeks ago. And his intent, as I understand it, is to hold the general fund harmless, so that the fees that normally have been flowing into the general fund would not be impacted, and that only the additional parking revenue from the meters and related items would be able to be available. Is that correct, Mr. Moderator?
Could you help us there with that one, Mr. Chapdelaine?
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. Yes, with a little nuance. So general fund revenue in prior years has been budgeted at $490,000 for all parking revenues. We expect that the combination of violation revenue as well as permit revenue, that's permits issued for the lots as well as permits issued for various lots across town, would be a combined $540,000. We estimate that revenues from both the street meters and the lot meters would be $425,000. So yes, we are planning and are projecting to hold the general fund harmless from a revenue point of view. We also, from the projections we have and the costs that we have in Article 39, we'll be also taking money off of the general fund appropriation by sharing the cost between the general fund and the parking fund.
One last thing, and the parking tickets end up where? The violations?
General fund.
Okay, directly.
Directly.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Yontel? Sir? Yep.
Tom Michaelman, Precinct 7. Okay, I think I get what's going on, and Mr. Jameson's question helped clarify. So who then, this money goes into some fund, and then who gets to decide how those funds are expended? Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Chapdelaine, can you answer that?
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. There's a great deal of ambiguity in the law, and we're waiting for further Department of Revenue guidance on that. And that's actually why we're not proposing to actually spend any money until we come back at what we are assuming will be a special town meeting in the fall. If we get guidance from the Department of Revenue that suggests that town meeting needs to appropriate it, we'll certainly follow that course of action. And as suggested by the Finance Committee through the hearing process over the course of the past few months, if the Department of Revenue does not suggest an appropriation process, we will be proposing a bylaw which requires us to bring the expenditures to Finance Committee for operational expenditures, Capital Planning Committee for capital expenditures, and then ultimately to town meeting for endorsement.
What was the first possibility?
The first possibility is that the DOR would make it, frankly, easier and say that we have to come to town meeting to appropriate it.
Okay. So the next question is, why are this being proposed now instead of when the state clarifies how we would go through the process?
Mr. Chapdelaine?
So,
yes, sir. I think we'll get an answer to this question, but that's a very good point from now on. So if you can answer that one question.
Mr. Michaelman's question?
Yes.
Yeah. Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. So we're proposing this. This has been many years in the making. Municipal Modernization Act, when it passed, actually finally legally allowed a clearly defined parking benefit district in statute. We felt it was, now that we're collecting meter revenues, we felt it was the right time to request acceptance of this statute. Frankly, coming into the discussion with the Finance Committee over the course of this town meeting preparation season, we wanted to start spending the money to be making these improvements to Arlington Center. But with very reasonable and well thought out concerns raised by the Finance Committee, we decided to slow down the request for the expenditure of funds. But by asking for it now, we'll be able to, if successful, have the ability to create a parking benefits district. The Board of Selectmen as parking commissioners would be able to actually vote on the boundaries of the district. It's pretty self-explanatory with where the meters are, but we'll have a map and we'll We'll have that request that the board approve that, and then we'll be able to come back in the fall with actual quotes and prices for capital improvements we want to make and bids from contractors for operational services we want to provide. So we'll have by getting it done now, we'll have the framework in place to go forward and make more direct requests in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fisher?
I think I heard the phrase net new revenue. What is that, and how much money are we talking? I personally can't decide how to vote on this unless I know the scope of the money and the
Mr. Foskett,
the
did you
scope
have
of
an
the
answer?
projects that are contemplated.
Mr. Tossi, do you know what the net new revenue could be?
And what does it mean?
If you look at Article 39 in the Finance Committee report, I think it's pretty well laid out. Now, there are other spreadsheets which are more complex, but generally speaking, the amount of money that has gone into the general fund in the past will be approximately the same money that's going into the general fund in the future. And that under Article 35, the projected new money, which will basically be meter money, is approximately $425,000. And that under Article 39, it delineates where the money will go, and that the balance of $150,000, which is for the parking district improvements, will be decided next fall, which I believe we'll be having a special town meeting in the fall. In the meanwhile, the manager and the selectmen are going through, having open hearings and discussing with residents what types of things that would be good to happen in the district, in the Arlington Center. One thing, of course, would be better snow clearing, so you could actually take your quarter and get to the meter. It would be a good thing. But anyway, the money's laid out under Article 39.
So, wait a sec. I heard both 150,000 and 425. Which is the new revenue?
The 425 is the new revenues.
Is that what you're projecting as well? Yep. Thank you, Mr. Tosti.
Adam Chaplin, Town Manager. So just to put a really fine point on it, what we believe from our projections today will be available for the parking benefit district is approximately $150,000. That's the amount that we think will be available for the parking benefit district. Now, come the fall, if it's a little more, a little less, we'll certainly make that clear, but that's our projection today.
Would it be fair to say that you, what I'm hearing, I'm also hearing the number 400,000 is after this year, is it likely to be 400,000 a year? Or is that 150,000 going to repeat itself?
Mr. Chaplin, please.
Adam Chaplin, Town Manager. So under Article 39, what we're saying is from meter revenue on the streets and meter revenue in the lots, we project on an annual basis we'll collect $425,000. In Article 39, we lay out that there's approximately $275,000 in expenses related to just operating the parking meters. Enforcement, maintenance, paying the lease on the meters, all of the various costs that go into just managing the parking management system that we've put in place. The balance after we've paid those costs, those operating costs, is the $150,000 balance that we can invest or would look to invest in a parking benefit district.
So the net new revenue would be around 150,000, and that would be typical annual revenue.
To be clear,
probably.
New revenue available for the parking benefit district. Some new revenue would go towards paying for the costs of operating the parking district.
Right. Can that accumulate? I mean, what are the types of things you would use it for? Repairing the brick or saving up money to do the renovations, the major renovations in front of common ground, for example?
Mr. Chaplin?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Frankly, both. So yes, it can accumulate. This fund would allow the money to roll from year to year. And some proposals that we've begun to look at are small things like lighting improvements in the Russell Common lot, lighting improvements walking from the Russell Common lot up Park Terrace to Medford Street, changes like that might cost between $10,000 and $20,000. Repaving in that area in the lots, aesthetically improving and improving the accessibility in the Russell Common lot. We have an estimate of $120,000. We have an estimate actually right out of our conceptual planning for Mass Ave for the Broadway Plaza reconstruction that you mentioned. That would cost $435,000. We have a number associated with increasing pedestrian safety at the crossing at Peg Spengler Way by slightly redesigning the road and adding bump outs and ramps. That's about $50,000. And then we have costs for various streetscape improvements we could look at. Adding benches that cost about $2,000 each, trees that cost about $1,500 each, fully planted. Lighting improvements, we have an estimate of $9,500. Planters, $2,000. Trash receptacles, $2,000 each. So depending on how many we decided to put on, you could do the math or multiplication from there. So there's a number of capital or, close to capital investments that we are poised to make rather quickly.
Here's what's bothering me about this. To me, the revenue is money that's available to spend on anything in town. And to me, if town meeting wanted to decide that rebuilding the bleachers at Spy Pond Field, which are really decrepit, is more important, it's illogical to me to rule that out. So I don't see the necessity. I can see that it would be a policy to spend this money as much as possible, but I don't see the necessity or the advantage of straitjacketing ourselves. So I would vote against this.
Sir, Mr. Moore? You.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Phil Goff from Precinct 7. I'd like to make a motion to terminate debate on this article and all matters before it.
Thank you, Mr. Goff. Motion to terminate debate has been seconded. All in favor, please say yes. Yes. All opposed? It's a affirmative vote to terminate debate, and I so declare. That brings us to the recommended vote of the Board of Selectmen on Article 26. As soon as Mr. Lathwood's ready, we're going to vote. 1 for yes to create the parking district, 2 for no. It's an affirmative vote, 170 in the positive, 28 in the negative, and that closes Article 26. 27. We were going to postpone 27 anyways, right, Joe? Yeah. All right, any motions for reconsideration? Mr. Tosti has served reconsideration on Article 44. Any other motions of reconsideration? We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor of adjourning, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? We'll see you on Wednesday. Wednesday, we have a full night. We're going to do all the money on Wednesday. Be ready. We're also going to get the high school kids. The magical singers are going to sing to us. So be here on time.